additions, corrections?
I'll move that the April 17th minutes be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Next item is Uber Mobility contracts.
Good morning, everybody. I am filling in for Bonnie Epstein, our planner of all things Uberish, all of our mobility programs. She is not here today. This is a recommendation to reapprove our contract with Uber that covers our Direct Connect First Mile, Last Mile program. Basically, what happened was back in December, just past December, the PSTA board approved all the different contracts we have with all of our private providers, Uber, Lyft, Care Ride, Wheelchair Transport, Liberty, United Taxi, all together. There was some change in management at Uber and leadership, and so they had some new legal counsel assigned to us that sent back some revisions to the contract we had already approved in March. So most of the changes that are in the agreement are non-substantive formatting changes. There was one change, it's listed in your packet. The PSTA attorneys noted they wanted to define what a platform change meant, which is essentially if you have Uber on your phone, you know that they're constantly, it seems like every day updating it in some way, changing it around a little bit, and their attorneys has added a definition of what that, so that they can keep doing that. They can update features on it, and the contract doesn't end. So it's really nothing major. I mean, they were doing that anyway. So again, there's no change to the cost or anything. It's just approving a new contract with Uber with that one change.
Questions, anybody? How can they change items inside a contract that's been approved? What gives them the authority to do that?
Well, we worked out a contract. We worked out, I think there was 5 different vendors. We drafted contracts, got each of them to review them, and then we took it to the PSTA board, actually the finance committee, in November of 2018, and then December board meeting approved. And they never signed theirs. The other ones did sign theirs, but they never signed theirs. And then out of the blue, we just got the attorneys, some new attorneys. They used to have attorneys in Miami, and then now we have an attorney in San Francisco that then asked for this platform change thing and a few other formatting changes. So we just...
There was something in there, right, driver partner, partner driver, that was the wording that wanted changed in it.
What's on the first page?
Is it on?
I think that was just a requested change in the...
Terminology, they call it updated terminology.
Yeah.
The physical impact hasn't changed.
Fiscal impact has not changed. The program hasn't changed.
Alan feels comfortable with this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Was there a motion? Move approval?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Passes unanimously, Rachel. All right, next item on the agenda is state and federal lobbyist contracts. Sounds exciting. Al?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm Al Burns, Director of Procurement. Typically, this action item would have went to Legislative Committee. However, this month there is not a Legislative Committee, so staff thought it'd be best that we bring this to the Finance Committee. We have this morning I'm bringing before you 2 lobbyist contracts, one for federal and the other one is for state. As you know, or you may, as you, as you know, we use our lobbyists to as advocacy teams for us on the federal side. We use them to promote regarding transportation initiatives before Congress, the Senate, FTA, and other federal entities. On the state side, they provide representation regarding PSTA transit initiatives and issues before the state legislature and other related entities. So, what I would like to do this morning is speak to each one of these independently, and I'd like to start off with the state, sticking with the agenda, I'd like to start off with the state lobbyist contract first. The action item is state government relations contract. Recommend extending the contract with RSA Consulting Group, LLC, for the second option year. A little bit of background once again. In 2016, the board approved the contract with RSA Consulting Group for state lobbying services. However, the board did not approve the CEO to be able to exercise the options for this contract. A couple of months ago, I brought before you an omnibus where I looked at about 8 contracts, and I asked you for approval to allow Brad to be able to exercise the options, and you did unanimously. However, this is not one of those. The current first-year option is expiring, and you know this. And RSA once again provides representation regarding PSTA transit initiatives and issues before the state legislature and other related interested entities. The fiscal impact of this is $8,000 a month or $96,000 a year. And again, recommend extending the contract with RSA Consulting Group for the second option year. Are there any questions?
Okay.
You're not
Go ahead.
asking us to give Brad the okay to extend it to the third option here?
No, sir. We're just asking for him to be able to exercise this option.
Okay. Go ahead.
Al, I looked at this in one of the previous budgets, and if I remember correctly, they were budgeted RSA for $270,000 for 3 years. Was that correct? Was that the initial budget on that? Because this would be like, what, $18,000 if we go through the third year?
I don't have that information right in front of me right now, sir, and I don't want to give you an incorrect answer.
Okay, but that just stuck in my mind.
Vince, can you say that?
I saw a budget for 3 years that included RSA's funding. And if I remember correctly, it was projected for 3 years for $270,000.
The lobbying budget would include not just RSA, but the federal side as well.
Okay,
So you're not just saying a singular line.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. I'd have to revisit that. I was looking at this, and I was coming up.
You're saying the whole lobbying is 270.
Richard, do you have a-
I don't have, again, I don't have that in front of me either, but when we're looking.
All right,
Yes.
I'm just throwing that out.
Sorry.
All right, and you got your question answered?
Yes.
Nothing?
No, I do.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So, you said that this contract's expiring. When's it expiring?
It expires in June of this year.
Okay. So my main concern is that there was a pretty significant conversation at the board level with folks from the legislative committee that, one of the reasons why they didn't want to allow for the CEO to authorize an additional year was because they wanted to weigh in on, how they felt the lobbying group was performing. So I'm reluctant, without their input, to move forward on approving it. When does the legislative committee meet again?
June 5th.
Okay, so they meet before the expiration of the contract. And at least on the state level, I don't know what's happening on the federal level. On the state level, I don't expect much to be coming from the lobbying group in June, or to keep them on the rolls. But my preference would be to have the legislative committee weigh in on whether they believe this is, that they want to continue that relationship. Otherwise, the numbers are exactly what we proved before in the contract.
If you could give me 1 second, sir, I want to make sure that I get the exact date for when the contract expires.
Okay.
You made a comment numbers here that show 90,000 is just for the RSA contract.
Yeah.
Yes,
Right,
that's
and
correct.
our lobbying budget includes both federal and state. So for 1 year, it was budget $174,000.
Okay, not, okay, you had made the comment of 270 for 3 years.
For
That was
RSA
ju-
only.
RSA only, okay.
And
It's not
And then I-
it's 7,000 roughly a year, a little more. Yeah.
In answer to your question, Commissioner, the RSA contract expires on June 22nd. Just
Nope.
to be specific.
So that is before our next meeting.
Well, the legislative committee meets on the 5th.
Right,
June
I mean, that's before the PSTA meeting to
June.
approve it.
In June.
You could recommend, you could recommend it subject to the,
I'd be fine recommending approval subject to the legislative committee agreeing or supporting that approval at their next meeting. Again, just because there was very strong conversation at the board level to have those folks weigh in, and I don't want to take them out of the loop. For fear they'll just wind up having that conversation at the board meeting, and I don't know what their input is, whether they're happy or unhappy.
To your point, what's the trauma if we go and do it in July? What's the big deal if we approve it in July? Contract?
Well, the contract technically it expires on June 22nd. So going to the board. However, if it's the board, I'd like to confer with Mr. Zeman and Brad. If necessary, I'm sure they'd be agreeable to a 1-month extension, knowing that we just have to go before the board and things of that nature.
Yeah, we're going to the legislative committee, which I think is your point, and then going to the board meeting after that input.
Yes, sir.
So that would be in June.
yeah, it would be
Yeah,
so we'll- yeah,
theoretically.
we'll still make it
like
work.
a
Be a week
6-day
after
extension.
their
Yeah.
contract.
So-
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue at all. sir.
Any other questions?
So we'll just table that.
And then what's
Yeah.
the expiration on the federal?
It's June as well. I'd like to just give you. Just. It's on the computer. June 24th. Excuse me, hang on.
Okay, so that would
Hang on a second.
be extended by 2 days.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Congress might do something.
Anybody else
Just
have a
kidding.
question? I have just a financial question. I've been to meetings in Tallahassee and in Washington with both of our lobbying organizations. And I'm just curious why the federal contract is for 7,000 and for 3 years it's going to stay the same versus these RSA contracts are increased annually. And I mean, the federal guys have a lot of expenses as well as the state guys as far as operations. So I'm just curious why the federal contract is staying at 7,000 for all 3 years and the state contract is increasing each year.
That's an interesting question that you raised, and I'm not quite sure of the process that was used before when we went out for solicitation and entered into negotiations with the firm. So I'd have to defer to other members of staff.
That is just what the proposals were back in 2016.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean,
good thing they're not getting it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm asking about RSA, not Vance Goya.
Yeah, that's the way it was.
That's all I'm asking. Is there any special reason why they're going up every year and Scoyac is staying level?
No, maybe competition, perhaps. I think I remember that we got a lot more competition for the federal one, than we did for the state.
I mean, as far as I know, they're both doing fine as far as servicing us.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not bad, I just was curious about the funding. Okay, all right, so we're gonna hold on both of these contracts until next month? So
Well,
what-
we will take these to the legislative committee, so
Yeah.
you won't see them again.
Yeah, okay,
Get there.
all right.
Fine.
Any other questions?
So that's applicable for, just for clarity on my part, that's applicable for the state and federal, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and employee training services.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Al Burns again. First, before we start on this, I would like to take the pleasure of introducing a member of my team, Ms. Angelique Baker.
Good morning.
She's a purchasing agent too. She's also a member of the PSTA leadership team. So I wanted to bring members of my staff that stand out and bring them before the committee so they can get, so you can meet some of the actual staff.
Leadership,
members.
PSTA.
Excuse me, leadership
Training.
Sorry.
Leadership.
This morning I bring before you the action item for employee training services. Approve a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options with St. Petersburg College, New Horizons Computer Learning Centers, Competency and Performance Solutions, Turnkey Coaching Solutions, and Transpro Consulting LLC, in an amount not to exceed $325,000 in total for the duration of the contracts, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise the 2 one-year optional years. So from here, I'd like to turn it over to Trish, Director of HR, and Ms. Baker.
Morning. As you know, PSTA, one of our great strengths is the development and the training that we provide for our employees. It's part of an important piece of our succession planning and the development that we provide here to our folks to have a strong staff to run our operations. We provide training services that range from leadership development to computer training services to communication, customer service. It really touches across the spectrum of our organization. So we went out to bid to secure agreements with vendors who can provide those services for us and have that stability and efficiency as we're planning our training needs for the years going out. And I'll turn over to Angelique to talk about the procurement.
Good morning. So in February, we went out with an RFP to see what kind of market was out there that we could capture some of these under contract. The RFP was posted out on both DemandStar and on our PSTA. We have a new software called Bonfire. We've been getting a lot of good response on that as well. As a result, we did receive 5 responsive proposals. The contractors that we did receive from were St. Petersburg College, Turnkey Coaching Solutions, New Horizons, Competency and Performance Solutions, and Transpro. We did have an evaluation committee, and they reviewed all of the proposals. Each one were very good in their own respective training services that they provide. So the committee decided to award contracts to each one of them in the amount of $325,000, but the amount is actually over 5 years and it is spread across, so they each won't be getting $325,000. They just get as per task order is directed to each of them. The training costs are included in their year's operating budget, and as I stated, it is by task order only.
So with that, once again, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options to St. Petersburg College, New Horizons Computer Learning Centers, Competency and Performance Solutions, Turnkey Solutions, in Transpro Consulting LLC in an amount not to exceed $325,000 in a total for the duration of the contracts, and recommend authorizing the CEO to exercise the 2 one-year optional years. If there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer.
Questions? No questions? How are you going to allocate the funding among 5 organizations?
I'll defer that to Trish.
Sure. We have a curriculum plan for each year, and it's based on looking at our agency priorities, our needs, the specific training that's needed for each job, as well as our overarching PSTA university curriculum. So as we have needs planned for the year, each vendor has a strength in particular areas. One may or may not be available at the time that we're looking to provide a training, and so there's a bit of good redundancy between the vendors, and so that's how we'll allocate what's needed and who's available and who's providing the training that most effectively meets the need that we have.
Essentially, this speeds up the process rather than doing a separate bid for every single, individual training activity. We have these 5 different groups in our stable, and Trish can ask them for a quote. It just speeds up the process.
Okay. All right. As long as you guys feel comfortable with that sort of format. Any other questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that the employee training service contract be approved.
Okay.
Second.
Yes, sir. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Passes
Thank you, Mr.
unanimously. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay. Moving on to informational items, capital plan and reserves. At the
Mr. Chair,
podium.
while Debbie's pulling it up, we put this presentation together really at the request at last month's meeting, of the board meeting, where we've been presenting over the last couple of months about our budget and the decision that the board made last month to maintain the services as is and dip into our reserves. And the appropriate question came up, what's the status of our reserves? And so this presentation is sort of trying to address that.
Thank you. I found it kind of funny today when I came in. Julie and I are dressed the same. This is Julie Lucas, our new director of accounting. You will also see some of my staff seems to be in purple. So we are kind of looking like a massive bruise this morning between the departments, which is probably what happens during budget season. Al keeps coming up to me during the day and saying, "Boss, you all right?" And I'm like, I'm just serious these days. It's very serious. So we've had a lot of discussion about the operating deficits and the impacts of what we've been going on that side of it. And what I wanted to do today is talk about the capital needs and how the decisions that the board has made impacts not only the operating side, but the capital side. And what does it mean for the capital plans that we have? By the end of this fiscal year, we anticipate having in our capital reserve $23 million. Over the next couple years, we will be using about $8.5 million to maintain the service that we have today to go towards operations. That just leaves us $14.5 million for the capital side, which we'll talk about is not enough. You may remember this chart, or affectionately called popsicle chart. And let me just kind of refresh you on this. The decision that we made, the board made, was to use operating capital reserves for operations. So in the first green bar, we have, that's our budget for this year of $81 million. As you recall, we had anticipated in this budget a $1.7 million deficit. We'll be reaching into reserves for that. Going forward, we continue to use reserves until we hit 2022, when we completely run out of money. Now, this is assuming no new operating assistance that would be coming from support from anywhere else than what we have today. So as you can see in 2022, without new money coming in, we will now not be just looking at $800,000 of anticipated cuts, but about $12.1 million worth of service cuts. And what this also means is that we are basically dead last in the country for the funding that we receive towards capital. So this is going to keep us probably not third from the end, but right at the end if we don't do something from the funding side of that. And this is coming from our American Bus Benchmarking Group, where we compare ourselves to our peers around the country. So over the next 5 years, we have an anticipated $146 million worth of capital that we are planning for. And we have gone through this past year as well, putting together a transit asset management plan. So the transit asset management plan that we have basically talks to us about keeping things in a state of good repair, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Basically, to maintain what we have today, I will need $164 million over the next 5 years. That doesn't even talk about coming up with additional money to improve operations to grow service. The reason why I don't really want to talk about that at this point is because we're starting at $23 million at the end of this year. As we move forward, by the end of the following year, we'll be at $15 million. By the time we get to the end of 2021, we'll have slightly less than $1 million left to handle everything.
Could you go back to 2 slides, I'm sorry?
Sure.
That one there, you said you had a $146 million capital plan, 5-year. And then the next box says you need $164 million. I don't understand that slide.
Okay. We have right now in our plan what we feel we can do, $146 million, and actually there's some placeholders in there that we don't have funding for. When we take a look at our State of Good Repair plan, our TAMS plan, our Transit Asset Management plan, it's telling me I should probably be replacing more buses than I'm replacing to keep it in optimums, the optimal level, at the exceptional level. This facility is getting older. We have technology improvements that will need to be addressed. There are certain things like the system that we use, for example, that we use for our accounting software. It works. Is it the best? It works. So if I go ahead and replace that, which the plan may be recommending for me to do, it may cost me millions of dollars to do that. I can go along with what I have today for as long as I possibly can. So if I were to be optimized, I'd be at $164 million. But what I can do is 146, with some caveats in there that we need to keep looking for money.
Go ahead.
So this slide just basically says by the end of 2021, without additional funding, all of our reserves will be gone. So what is funded in the plan? Our replacement buses. We're actually looking at putting trolleys out there on our beach routes on the Gulf Boulevard. And what this does is it saves quite a bit of money. We have 16 buses that are life expired. By replacing them with trolleys, and who doesn't love riding a trolley, we'll be also consistent with what we look like with the Jolly Trolley service. Those buses don't have the same useful life. They're at a 7-year useful life. So we're actually going to be buying 20 instead of 16 to allow the maintenance department to keep maintaining those buses. But it saves us a significant amount of money. We also are replacing some buses with the BAE hybrids. And we also have money in the capital plan for matching funds for electric buses. So essentially we're paying for a diesel, and then what the low-no grants, if we're successful getting them, pays for the increase in costs to the electric.
Debbie, the trolley-style buses do not have an electric mode, right?
No, they do
they're
not.
hybrid.
They're diesel.
They're diesel, plain diesel. They have not any hybrid of those
No.
developed yet. Okay. All right.
So we have other projects that are funded, which we'll talk a little bit more about. Real-time customer information, our Flamingo Fairs, Central Avenue BRT, which will include our $7.6 million, as well as some matches for grants. And what we're going to be talking about today too is how we can take our little bit of money and leverage it into more money as we go forward. One of the things that's happening that has come to our attention over the last few months is what I call forced technology replacement. We know down the road we're going to a 5G and our systems will not be supported. Last night at the track committee, one of the discussion items as we went around the room was someone raised their hand, the real-time information sign is not working consistently at this location. And this is what this system does, is allow for our CAD AVL, allows for us to tell where our buses are. That is so important to our customers, and we know by 2023, we need to have that supported. That's a $10 million estimated project. What we've been able to do with some of the savings with the trolleys, et cetera, is cobble together money over the next few years to be able to fund this, because it's essential to our operations. Of course, when we do that, something else usually has to give. The other thing that we have is our Central Avenue BRT, our rapid transit system, in which our $7.6 million is leveraging about $9.5 million of state funds. Other money that we're putting in from the local side is from the City of St. Pete, and of course the federal money. So our little bit is giving us a lot. And this is also giving us, as we were talking the other day, Commissioner Eggers, something to really put out to the community that is extremely special. It is allowing for increased service, so it's faster service, more frequency, and it's something that really can say, this is what PSTA can do for you. But what is not funded? I made a list, is probably not all inclusive of things not funded. One of the important things up there is our electric bus charging infrastructure. As we get more electric buses, we need to be able to have the ability at this facility to be able to get charged for buses, not just with our little depot chargers, but we just don't even have the infrastructure. Duke doesn't to bring it all in. So we're looking at what we need to do to this facility, and that is, again, a large ticket item we'll talk about. More matching funds to leverage for other federal grants. We've got Brad's dream is having an integrated mobile system. I'd like to make at least one of his dreams come true while I'm here. And the list goes on and on. But what's most important to me at the top is maintaining that state of good repair. And what that means is when FTA said every transit agency in the country has to put together a transit asset management plan. Because they want to know if they're giving us money and they're investing in us, that we're able to maintain our assets such that we're providing safe, cost-effective, reliable transportation to our customers. This is what we were just chatting about, the electric infrastructure. Again, that's approximately a $10 million project for which I have no funding available. I've included that in the plan as a placeholder because it needs to be first and foremost in our mind as we continue to move forward to find funding for that. We at PSTA are going to be applying for a bus and bus facility grant. It will cover 90% of it. We would have to come up with $1 million, which I do have in the plan. Clearwater Intermodal Transit Station. We are in the process of designing that. The design should be completed by 2020. Estimated cost $20 million. We're going for a build grant with FTA, and we would have to put in $4 million in order to do that. And that would replace our Park Street terminal. So this is why the matching funds are so important. At the good end of things, I can give a 10, like out of $100, I can give 10 and I get 90. Sometimes it's 20-80. Sometimes it's 50-50, but you can see how our money can leverage other, what I call OPM, other people's money. So what can we do? Well, we're looking to Forward Pinellas, our MPO, to prioritize public transportation in their plans. We're also looking to say who else can provide money outside of PSTA to make all of this happen. So we can look at the county, we can look at other cities. Anybody who wants to make a donation, I'm happy for that as well. So as you can see, from my standpoint, which is why I run around here a little cranky these days, I've got needs on the operating side, and I've got needs on the capital side. And I just don't have enough to make it all work without help from outside funding sources. So with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Questions, please?
In that 2 or 3 year period that we're talking about, how many hybrids are being replaced?
We will be replacing, let's see, 8 buses in each of the years.
So 24?
Mhm. And then what we're going to be doing, it will be replacing diesel buses, by the way, in the next couple of years. But we'll be replacing them with electric buses that we've already got under grant. And then we'll be replacing with the VAE hybrid electric buses as well. Then we have the 20 trolleys that's going to help us significantly in our bus replacement plan.
Make sure I'm understanding right. If we replace an electric bus, we're with an electric bus, we're only replacing it when we have a NOLO grant.
Correct.
So it's essentially getting a diesel.
Right, we're buying 2
Right.
diesels and getting 2.
But we're not getting that deal on the hybrids.
Correct.
So each one's about $200,000 more.
The hybrid buses are at about $750,000. And then the electrics.
Diesel.
And then diesel would be, Henry, I haven't even looked at diesel prices in a while. The cost of a diesel bus is maybe 500,
Probably about 580,
580?
all of our technologies.
And there's $750 on the hybrids. So you're $180,000 difference times the 24 buses. Just a point of reserve where we could get more reserve dollars.
Thank you.
Mr. Schulman?
Can you walk me through the electric infrastructure costs? Specifically, when we were looking at going with the electric buses, we made the conscious decision to trade, we said we're going to be reducing our operating costs
Correct.
because we're not buying fuel. But it seems like, so now we've just shifted it to a capital cost that's much bigger than I thought we would wind up needing based on what we were talking about.
As we grow our fleet, assuming we grow our fleet on the electric side, we're going to have to do something here in this facility to be able to keep them charged, to bring in. I don't even think the grid can support much more than what we've got in our plan over the next couple of years.
And I understand that. I guess my concern is, I'm trying to figure out where the break even is. Because now we're using, in this case, $10 million of capital to replace what would have been operating costs for a diesel, right? To provide the electricity the fuel that goes into an electric bus on the capital side. So, if we're looking at a cost benefit, I'm wondering if bringing on more electric buses makes sense, or if the cost winds up being significantly less, just paying for the fuel costs that we would have with the diesel or a hybrid. And I just don't know, whether that makes sense, and if we're talking about a crunched budget on the capital side as well.
Right, and right now I don't have any funding in there for this, I just have it as a placeholder. And of course, we will look to partners such as Duke to see what they can do to help us
Your
out.
issue is very
Yes,
valid. Right now, we have 6 electric vehicles on order, and according to the engineers we have, working with Henry, that's about all the electric power to this facility can support without a fairly substantial investment if we want to go beyond the 6 that we've already purchased. Now, we are applying for, VW settlement funds, Lono funds for now in the capital plan that Debbie's talking about. And we are looking to every possible way to see if we can get some of that infrastructure paid for free. I mean, at no cost to us. Duke Energy has grants to private industry to sell more electricity, which they would sell a lot of electricity to us in the future if we could get that. That's what she's talking about. We're applying to an FTA competitive source. It's called Bus and Bus Facilities. It's a federal competitive grant. Odds of getting that are probably 1 in 10. probably not gonna get it. The other issue that we have to just think about that we're planning is those low-no grants that we apply for, that yes, we are budgeting for a diesel and then we get an electric with the federal funds. But the diesel, the base has to be local reserve funds, not federal funds. You can't match federal with federal. So once we're out of reserves, then we won't be able to buy, then we won't even be able to apply for these types of grants, right? We won't be able to match any of the grants, so we might as well not even apply.
I understand, but, and to your point, if we're already, based on our contracted amounts, at capacity for the electric buses, then we need to be mindful that, adding one more bus adds a significant need for capital improvement. So there's the cost of adding those extra buses now was a non-event with the grants that matched, and we had, but adding one more and puts us over that level could become exceedingly costly.
Yes.
So we need to walk that line a little bit, and it may also be looking at other charging locations where, we don't need the capacity here, but, other places around the county, might be able to, help support that. But I just want to make sure that as we talk about adding more buses, if we're at capacity, that we're not putting ourselves into a position where we need that capital requirement without the.
Yeah, the capital requirement coming is gonna be needed a lot faster than the operating savings that we're gonna be getting, because you're gonna have to be getting, I don't even know what the number of buses that we've talked, you all have proposed that the more electric buses we have, there's a number at which the operating costs start coming down. So it's not just having 3 buses. It's not having 10 buses, it's probably having 50 buses or, a third of our fleet, when you start really noticing that. The trade-off is somewhere in there. I'm not sure where it is.
Well, and that's what I don't know either. I just want to make sure that we're careful as we progress in ordering more equipment that has a long life, that we're not committing ourselves to a greater capital need in a time when we're concerned about our capital needs.
We're right with you.
In this 3-year window, it's really uncomfortable.
Commissioner Bennett?
You mentioned Duke Power. Have we gone to them and talked to them about improving the infrastructure here at our facility? I don't see any numbers up there. I don't see 10, 12, $15 million given to us by Duke Power.
Well, our, and really, I would describe it as a ballpark estimate for the infrastructure that would need, the electrical infrastructure that would be needed to upgrade this facility for 25 buses, it's $10 million. $10 million of electrical infrastructure. Now, we believe that ultimately we will be able to get some funding from Duke Energy. I mean, they do have different programs. They, of course, their desire would be first that we find some kind of other money and that they don't pay anything for it. Option B, they would say, well, maybe we'll give you a loan. And then option C is, well, we've got this funding available or something, So, I mean, the points here are made. I mean, the one point I will make is that in the grand scheme of things, it's impossible to find more operating funds from federal or state. It's very even difficult to find it from Pinellas County or cities. It's easier. There are more available funding sources for capital, including Duke Power and other private entities. But we are applying for these grants. I would say, just in comparison, we have a better shot of getting capital funds for some of these projects than we do operating.
Well, you're almost telling us that the decision that we made about cutting routes is a mistake. We have no other choice. If we give up all our money in the reserves, we can't purchase buses. So that's a mistake.
I'm not saying, we're not saying.
You can't have a big bus on Central Avenue with 4 passengers on it. I saw that Friday night 10 times. A giant 60-foot bus downtown with 2 or 3 passengers on
You
Here
saw
comes-
a 60-foot bus on,
Well, 60-foot bus.
Um,
All right.
Just to address your concern, we get, which we'll be talking about the public hearing after this meeting, we get 5307 money, which is formula money from our Federal Transit Administration. That money goes towards our buses. We also have some of our capital reserve going for the electric buses, but a lot of our buses are covered by federal grants. So we want to be able to keep that service on our road. That's our primary.
Well, you're telling us that we're gonna be soon out of federal grants because we
No,
don't
we're
have the
going to be out
matching
of
money.
PSTA money.
We don't have PSTA money, so we can't get federal grants.
We
For
can't
the
get
electric.
discretionary.
For the
Discretionary
electric
grants
buses.
requires a match.
In that 3-year period that we're talking about, how many dollars are we getting from the feds?
About, over the 5-year, about 112, so we get, let's see, maybe over the next couple years, about, what, 42 million,
Over the next, how many years?
2 years,
40 million?
42 plus million.
And that's for our buses?
And that's for our buses and any other projects that we have, but the majority of the money goes towards buses.
So that covers all of our bus purchases?
Right.
The
With
hybrids?
the exception of the electric.
Okay. Mr. Schultz?
And with regard to this, I do understand and I appreciate the fact that it is easier to get funding from other sources for capital versus operating. And so if we're able to switch our consumable operating and fuel to a capital cost, that makes sense. My concern was making sure that we don't commit ourselves to the need before we've committed ourselves to the funding from
Right.
other sources. The only other question, I shouldn't say the only, another question I had was, you said in 2022, we would anticipate 12.1 million in service cuts. Is there a sense as to just what the scale is that would be on ridership? Like how many people, how many rides? Yeah, so we can give it some perspective. 12.1, it's a big number, but even I sitting here don't know exactly what that means to the people of Pinellas County.
we're working on trying to
Quantify?
quantify and define what that is a substantial, it's a complete change in the organization and the service we provide in Pinellas County.
Well, and I realize you won't know that until there's actual routes and things on the table, but some perspective as to what that really means, especially to our potential funding partners, I think is a better guide as to what to expect than just the dollar amount. At least it would also be for me, how many people does that affect? And how would that change the dynamics of economic development and the flow of people in the county?
Question.
Okay, Commissioner.
I do think, we talked about this operating thing, and the operating thing continues to bother me, because this year, each year from now on, as we go forward, that number's gonna keep growing. And primarily probably due to benefits, increases. I don't know about the contracts for salaries, on the buses, but, with no additional millage available, and we've been enjoying some of our highest values, market values, that I suspect probably, maybe not this year, but in the coming 2-3 years, in this time frame, will be coming back into maybe 3 or 4%. So we're not even going to be matching
Right.
new increases in cost. So that number is going to get progressively worse. Do we have any plans on any level or any asks anywhere, especially to the state legislature, on the millage rate? Is there any method, any way we can address that operating cost efficiency? Because to me, that's a bleeder. That bleeds out no matter what. We can't. We're using reserves to cover operating is just bad policy, so that's an issue. So I don't know if we've done an official in writing ask to anybody about millage or the millage cap.
And that's a great point, and kind of feeds into what I was thinking. Have we done? This is based on the projections of growth, asset values increasing on the county level. Just the standard operating procedures. Has there been any sort of stress test on what this would look like if we had a slowing economy or a non-growth economy, which is not out of the realm of possibility as we approach 2022?
the assumptions that we have in there, especially our biggest piece, is the ad valorem tax coming in. We take a more conservative approach, and we've tended to come in more than what, and we usually look to the county for that as well.
We don't do our own, we don't have economists on staff, and yes, we all watch the news and are worried about a recession. We totally copy a much more robust analysis of the future that Pinellas County does every year. They provide a 200-page document of assumptions on benefits and ad valorem property valuation increases, flood insurance, everything is in there for cities and PSTA and other groups to use as a baseline. And that's what we use.
Well,
So they do have property values, not growing in the short term fairly substantially and then kind of tapering off.
And I agree with using their numbers. I was just wondering if we had, as a separate exercise, reduce some of those to see, what a different worldview might look like. As a way of also going back and asking the legislature and asking other entities that, now's the time you ask when people have it.
Right.
Because they won't want to give it when they don't.
Correct.
I mean, when you paint the picture, I mean, again, I don't have the exact numbers, but when you paint the picture that you can't cover operating costs, number one. Number two, that we are actually having 1% to 1.5% of our residents riding the bus service that we have. It's not like if you don't get that help, I mean, they're effectively telling you, right, that, well, we just don't need a bus service in Pinellas County. I mean, that's because we can't cover our operating and because we don't have a robust, it's not like we have a robust bus service right now. Where, I think that picture has to be delicately but crisply painted for folks to understand where we are. I mean, and not do it, with our residents, our riders. That's just not a fair way to do it. We talked in March about not cutting routes, and then we paraded everybody through in April to tell us that we shouldn't cut routes. Well, we told them already we weren't going to cut routes, and then we said again we're not going to cut routes, and then at the very end of the meeting we said, well, that goes until June or July or something. So we wouldn't even commit to next year not cutting routes. So that you talk about fatigue for those 1.5% of our folks that desperately need it. That's not a good method to use. But we do need to be painting that picture to our legislators that says, look, we talked yesterday about that $80 million, $15 million of it is our administrative staff, which is
It's
thin.
actually under
Thin,
$9
thin,
million.
yeah,
Under $9 million.
yeah.
I actually looked it up.
Okay, so
And that's
the-
assuming that we're
Right.
running without an HR department to hire the bus operators,
Right.
assuming we're operating without the CEO, et cetera. That's about 11%, 11%
Yeah,
of our budget.
that's the point that
Yeah.
we were talking about. It's that, so the bulk of our operating is for that not robust bus system. I mean, it's 65 million.
Yeah.
So it's, or 65 to 70 million, whatever it is. So I mean, I think these are powerful comments to make to our legislators about that millage thing.
In commissioning.
We're sorry, I don't mean to keep.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump back to the infrastructure for the electric buses, and what was discussed would be for 25, that's the amount of money needed. Am I not correct? Like $10 million to get that?
For 25 buses?
Yeah, is that gonna?
Henry, is that about right? How much?
22.
22.
Okay. However, what we're looking at right now are 6 more coming, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll
so,
have a total.
and are we in good shape to take care of what we have immediately coming is my question? To charge them properly, our infrastructure. And here's Henry.
Well, because I don't like talking to.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. It's a lot of money.
So, we're currently able to support the 2 we have now, and we'll be able to support the 4 that we have coming in about a what we've started working on now is I've assembled some key people from Duke Energy, district engineers, also some high-level folks in their energies department, and looking ahead to help us quantify what is needed both on our side and also what is needed on the Duke Power side. We're commissioning a document to really look at infrastructure here and also infrastructure in the grid. So for the time being, 6 buses, we're going to be able to support the charging needs right now. One thing I want to point out in terms of partnership with Duke Energy, they have a program called the Park and Plug program. You may have heard of this in your own municipalities where they're installing fast chargers for electric vehicles. The 2 chargers the 2 chargers that we have now on our property, in addition to their installation costs, Duke Power has actually reimbursed us for those costs. So that was approximately $62,000-ish chargers plus installation. So Duke Power reimbursed us for that cost under the Park and Plug program. So we're looking to further continued partnerships with Duke Power. I can tell you that one that is going on right at this moment is right at the front of our property. You probably see a bunch of lineman trucks out there, and they're installing a pole with some new transformers. That is Duke Power installing the transformers in the pole to power the inductive wireless charger that is going out into lay-by. So Duke Power is picking up that cost. So we're looking to continue that throughout the duration of the electric bus program.
Thank you. I'll entertain one question or more, thank you.
Any other questions?
So
Mr.
that-
Bennett?
You know, I think this just really encourages us to collect the ad valorem taxes from everyone. We need to push on that more. I'd like to see us report every quarter at least, what are we doing about the towns, communities that are not paying their fair share. I don't think we could even think about increasing the ad valorem taxes on our citizens that are paying the full amount until we collect from everyone. I don't know what we're doing about that. What did we do about that yesterday? Anything?
Well, we had a lovely meeting with the city, one of those non-member cities, the city of St. Pete Beach, yesterday.
Okay.
We have I think the county commission has a transportation workshop scheduled now for July. This afternoon, I'm meeting with the county administrator and Whit Blanton again for our every 2 weeks meetings to discuss the non-member city issue, which really would have to be a vote by the county commission to do that. And we're having those ongoing meetings. We are working on that as well as every possible option. And I really appreciate your.
Well, I meet monthly with some Treasure Island people because they're on other committees with me. And they tell me for them to be able to pay the full ad valorem amount, they need to have more east-west capabilities. Just having a bus go down Gulf Boulevard is not adequate. They need to have buses that are going east. They can't have somebody walk out of a hotel, stand on Gulf Boulevard to catch a bus to go downtown and have it take them 2 hours to get downtown.
Well, when you have that conversation, tell them that there are parts of North County that don't get what they get in service, and they're still paying their millage.
Parts where?
In North County. There are many parts up there that they pay their millage, and they don't get any service. So there are people that are doing, again, it's kind of the argument of paying your school tax. Well, I don't have any kids in school anymore, so I shouldn't have to pay it. Well, we all pay it. So it's the same thing with this. I mean, everybody has to kind of pick they're getting some service. They're not getting as much service as other places, but they're getting more than some.
So we think the only way to get that to happen would be for the county to have a referendum that everybody paid the same amount.
There's 2 ways that could happen. County could schedule a series of referendums that perhaps the citizens would sort of impose it on those non-member cities. It's probably not the appropriate program. But then, or Or, and this has never happened in the last 30 years, a city could put their own referendum on the ballot. They could just vote any day to put a referendum on the ballot to do it themselves. It hasn't happened yet.
If I could take a look at it. Debbie, could you go back to the slide with the benchmarking group, please?
With the what?
Benchmarking group.
Oh, sure.
I think the other side of the coin on this is if you look across the bay where Hillsborough County, who we thought would never, ever do a referendum to do anything, has now jumped light years ahead of PSTA with HART, because now HART has good funding. And I think we need to go back and take another look at the fact that nationally we're way behind the power curve, and go back and say maybe it's time that we took another look at not worrying about increasing having a referendum to increase the taxation on homes and other real estate, but to look at another source of funding. And that could be through a sales tax, it could be through some other technique, but we need to look at a more logical way to fund us than just using ad valorem taxes when property values go up and down, and they don't go up that fast, even if they do go up, and figure out a way that we can get a more reliable source of funding. And that's more long-term, but it's a way that we can not be constantly forced to be at the bottom of the barrel here in terms of our funding structure compared to other communities all across the country. I don't know how we do that. The green light didn't turn out so great, but we need to go back and revisit something along those lines, I think. Anybody else comment on that?
I think, the message, and again, you never know why a referendum passes like that. I mean, you had the business community was a big player in that one, in the one over there, which was helpful. You had it's hard to put your finger on exactly why it was successful. A lot of their monies, if I'm not mistaken, Brad, some of their monies and some big percent are going into just general transportation infrastructure.
Yeah.
Kind of like our penny for Pinellas, which penny for Pinellas passed by what, 83%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if it was on a regular election year, it probably would have passed at least 65%, maybe 70. So that part of it really that carried a little bit. I think the business community carried, them getting behind it. It wasn't a rail program. It was really kind of an expansion of buses and more service and that kind of thing. So
that's what we're talking about, is more service.
no, I understand. No, I know. I'm talking about compared to our last effort.
Yeah.
This effort was a little bit, I mean, I do think that infrastructure piece is a big deal. Now, does that cover operating? Did that cover operating infrastructure over there?
Operating and capital.
And capital,
Yeah.
which is different than
Penny for Pinellas.
penny for Pinellas is just capital. So if you were to do another, referendum, you probably would want to have flexibility to do some operating with it, but that would have to be carefully.
Well, we can't be always at the tail end of the country. I mean, we're facing a situation, just what you were talking about with school taxes, facing a situation where only a small percentage utilize the system, and so therefore everybody else thinks they don't need to fund it, whereas what we need to look at is funding a system that would make it attractive to have a big increase in ridership.
Yeah, I
Like
think
most or urban areas.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point, and I know that they're having a conversation too, is like, how do we put together a plan, a really attractive plan to get people interested at all in getting on the buses? So you're saying, well, we're gonna do this, and all we're gonna do is go from 1.5% of our residents to 2% of our residents, and nobody gets excited about that. So we've gotta do something in our plan, when we start painting that picture that is really attractive to people.
Yeah.
Whether it's our seniors that need mobility, our business community that says we have to do it to recruit good people, young folks here, or to keep young folks here, or whatever that is. We gotta, those drivers.
Avoid urban gridlock, et cetera.
Yeah, that one, depending on who you talk to, I've had some people come in and say, God, you guys have it great here compared to where they're from in terms of gridlock. So you gotta be careful with the gridlock one. But I think we have a lot of quality of life stuff.
Okay. All right, so I want to thank you, Debbie, for bringing us up to speed on this. Is there anything further we need to do at this time?
No, I would just like to say, I appreciate the discussion. I think it was a good discussion. It's exactly what we hoped. I would say I'm optimistic that we're having these discussions. To Commissioner Egger's point, the transit systems on the left-hand side, they do have, they have more than 1.5% of their population riding. Some cities have 40%. New York City has 60%. It's like a chicken and egg thing.
Yeah.
We're gonna stay at 1.5%.
Unless we do something.
Yeah. So keep this in mind. The witness truck walked in. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to finance.
Okay, what I'd like to do before Julie's gonna give the report, because I figured by now you'd be tired of hearing of me, and she volunteered to do this every month, is to give the financial update. I just wanted to, let me come around, we got an award, speaking of budgets. I'd like to thank Michael Hanson and his team, Nelson, Dort, Lamari, Martinez, Jess helped us, Pam. We got our budget award for last year's budget, so I'm very proud of that.
Great.
And all the work that the team did. So, and that means everybody in this room as well, because all the directors and chiefs had a lot to do with getting all the budget information in there. But putting it all together in a nice thing, meeting all
Very
the
nice.
detailed requirements. Good job, Michael. Go ahead, take it away, Julie.
Okay, well, welcome to March, Commissioners. I'm Julie Lucas, Director of Accounting. We are halfway through the fiscal year at this point, and for the month, we anticipated a deficit of 2.6 million, and we were less than 1% off from that, so we were very close to what was budgeted. On the revenue side, we're doing very well, thanks to our interest income, Michael, and the local beach trolley helped also. On the expense side, we're less than 1% negative to budget, and while most areas were under budget, as you can tell, fringes were over due to an accrual adjustment that nets with last month. So the effect will end this month there. Trolley expenses over budget due to more plugs than anticipated being needed, and staff is working very hard throughout the agency to come in under budget in their areas. So as we continue to the year-to-date report, expenses for year-to-date were 1 million under budget, contributing to the budgeted surplus and driving the favorable variance. On the revenue side, the timing of the property tax was the leading cause of the unfavorable variance there. With the expenses, the hard work of everyone shows by all the areas on this list that are under budget. Trolley expense continuing to be over budget, as does the salary expense due to overtime and vacant positions, which we are pretty much in line with by now because it's May, it's not really March. Any questions on any other reports?
Just maybe we could talk to that overtime. See what we're doing to try to address that, because it really is an area that you try to budget for and then you still can't do it. So what's going on there?
Well, we have assembled a team of people from planning and scheduling department, from transportation, finance, taking a look at all the things that are going into the mix, as including HR. And as we've seen where we've gotten to the point where we're trying to be fully staffed, that has a positive impact, obviously, on the overtime. So we've been running classes continuously in order to bring in new operators. As we look to next year, we're taking a look at adding operators and finding what we call the sweet spot of adding operators to reduce overtime, but also take into consideration the benefits, the health insurance piece. So we've been working on that. We actually met with Brad yesterday, going over our ideas on that and coming up with where we think we'll be to try to contain that. So we're working on it. The other thing is we know we need more operators during spring break. So when we take a look at timing some of the classes and really ramping them up, we'll do that before spring break with more operators, so we've got more people coming out. Because at any given point in time, we have.
The overtime really hit its peak, like around Thanksgiving and last fall. And then thanks to the HR and training groups, training tons and tons of new employees, we are now, just before spring break started, we sort of hit our, we had a fully loaded staff. You know, people quit every single month, but we were hiring at a faster pace, and the overtime has come down. The last couple of months, the overtime has been more closer to budget, closer to what the budget is. It's really just the number of staff.
What's causing such a fallout of drivers?
The economy.
Pardon me?
Well, I think it's a problem in every transit system and trucking. The economy makes it much harder to recruit and retain hourly drivers. You know, our new union contract has a competitive salary, so we're doing better on that. We're doing okay. We're doing much much better than most other transit systems, especially in the state of Florida. So, knock on wood, we'll be doing okay. Am I allowed to ask a question since I have the chair of the MPO and the executive director here? I noticed that the MPO pass-through is $9,000 behind. Are they shorting us?
Save voice never.
You call me. And we're trying.
I would have to look up the answer to.
I believe we got the grant a little later than usual, so we're a little bit behind, but the planning department's doing a great job getting us caught up.
Yeah, it's a timing issue sometimes with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just
I'll
kidding.
make sure we get our 80,000. Our 80,000 that's remained stable for the last 500 years, we'll get it.
Yeah.
Brad?
I'm sorry, Pam. The agreement didn't start until January 1st of this year, but it was
Okay.
discussed with the Ford Canal staff that we will be using all of it for
Yeah.
the
Okay.
due date.
Okay, just checking.
I know this is gonna sound kind of goofy, and maybe, the union would probably, have a fit, but are there folks that have, retired, that 55, 60 years old, 65 years old, that, that are, maybe looking to get back into the workforce, or trying to get in the workforce, that have the license, but don't want to work year-round, that would be available for a pool of people?
It's a great idea. We hoped. It seems like the answer is no.
I've never seen anything out there in the, and not that I'm looking for it, but that would come to mind. Oh my God, they're going after a group of retirees that they really want to go work some more. They want to work, kind of thing. But I've never seen any of it. So if you've tried, I haven't seen it. So.
Trish, is that true, or? I know we tried.
Yeah, we have. I mean, there is a certain period of time that people have to be gone in order to satisfy the Florida retirement system requirements. So they have to be out for at least a year. But yes, we have reached out to folks that we think would be good
But those-
candidates to come back.
And they wouldn't be full-time employees that have to be benefited, right? I mean, if they are.
Well, currently what we have available are full-time positions where they would come back and.
Okay, well,
be in a
that's not what I was
full-time-
thinking, but.
No, but we
I-
even looked at part-time without benefits.
Yeah. I think that would be great.
Flipping that around, what's the minimum age for drivers?
We don't have a minimum age, but we do require at least 7 years of driving experience.
So 23.
if you got your licenses.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Ah, smart question.
Okay,
High school graduation.
Performance?
Mr. Chair, let me just quickly highlight the ridership report is available for you, and we saw a nice increase in ridership. Part of that was there was one extra day. This is always comparing last April to this April. And there was one more operating day or weekday in the month of April 2019 and 2018. That always benefits us. But overall, it was a really good month. We had really good ridership on our spring break service in Clearwater, and overall, due to spring break, ridership was up. There was one more thing I wanted to bring up, just to
Okay.
make the Finance Committee aware.
uh-huh.
You know, we have adopted procurement policies and in our rules and regulations. And in those procurement policies, there is a provision for the authorizing the CEO to enact emergency procurement policies to keep the operations running. I want to just let you know that we had recently had to enact those authorities because our gasoline tank, which we have an above ground gasoline tank that basically is used to fuel our non-buses, our cars, trucks, and things like that. The meters on it identified a leak in it. It didn't spill because it's a double-walled tank, so it just leaked inside of it, but it needs to be replaced. And in order to get a new one in here before the hurricane season, essentially, I approved, within my authority, an $88,000 replacement of this tank. But the issue is we didn't conduct a competitive procurement. We went and placed an order with the original manufacturer of the
Less cost.
tank. And it was $88,000, but that was in order for
That's com-
expediency.
That's completed now?
It is.
Okay.
And I just wanted to let you, the Finance Committee, and I'll put it right up in the board, to
Right.
the effect that we did that.
Right, well, we don't need a spill, so that's,
Right.
yeah, all right. Any questions, any comments, board members? I want to thank all of you for being here and asking, I think, good questions. Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry, you missed the quarterly reports. That was-
did we?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, I was flipping the page, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
All right, so let's go to the quarterly reports, Debbie.
We have quite a variety of quarterly reports in there. We have the capital that is in there. And on the capital side, we're actually doing quite well. It's one of those things where you can get behind pretty easily. I've never seen capital go ahead, except maybe in the case of the tank that broke. But we have year-to-date a $19 million budget. We're at $16.2 million. And a couple of the areas that we're a little bit behind on is more timing of the regional fair project, on the invoices for that, and as well our phone system, which we're taking a really close look at. We have a new IT director, and she is going great guns to take a look at how everything is affecting everything. So we don't mind putting it on hold to do things right the first time. So we're very pleased with that. We also have a fuel report that is in there, and currently our average price is at $2.23 a gallon compared to our budgeted amount of $2.30. We have the ability to lock in prices. Right now, we're working with Hart on a joint solicitation, so that I can't lock in going forward at this point in time, correct, Al?
Correct.
So we go through that, but that's looking a bit favorable. The other item, before I turn this over to Michael to talk about our investment in reserves, is we have at the very end our health insurance update. And during the first part of the year, we had a significant number of very serious claims. Matter of fact, we have 9 claims over $125,000, which is unusually high. Fortunately, we have a stopgap, so we never pay more than $125,000 on any one claim, but we've seen that come down significantly. And right now, we're seeing more people as they're hired on, they go into the high deductible plan. plan. We see that they're doing really well with that. Matter of fact, overall, what they call our loss ratio is really, really good. It's right where the insurance market would want it to be. And we're at 78% at the end of, or halfway through the year, through the end of March. One of the things that I asked our Garing Group, which is our broker, to take a look at is that Cigna is going to be going out, I guess, going public in Wall Street. So now's a good time to ask them for giving us some favors to make it look really good that they're renewing clients. So I said, go ask them for 0% increase. Now I know that's not possible. Brad asked for -2% yesterday. But when we actually ran the numbers through all the formulas with insurance, it looked like we would be coming in at about 7.5%. I haven't had a chance to talk to Garing, but it looks like it will be coming in at 5%. So that's really good news for us. Our anticipation in the budget so far has been 10%. So we're doing really well. So I may be coming back to you next month with an action item a little earlier than usual to take advantage of the benevolence of Wall Street impacts on Cigna.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Michael Hanson, Director of Finance. So as of March 31st, 2019, we had approximately $63.7 million in funds invested through 4 different financial institutions and a variety of CDs and money market accounts. The average interest rate was about 2.13%. Turning over to the reserves report, we currently have that $63.7 million in investments, and out of that is about $31,000 in FTA restricted funds, $13.5 million in our 2-month operating reserve, about $4 million in insurance reserves, and about $25 million in capital reserves at the current time.
What was the first one?
The 31,000 FTA restricted funds.
31,000?
Yeah.
Any questions? When we start having to withdraw, or draw down, I should say, our reserves, then are the different accounts that we're invested in such that we're not going to get any penalties or anything like that if we...
Yeah, we keep a certain amount of our funds liquid so that we'll be able to draw down.
I don't want to draw down, but we may have. Yeah. Okay.
There's certain times of the year, like now, that we have our property taxes, we're getting our property taxes in and draw down even for the operating budget towards the end of the year. So we make sure that.
So you're on top of that as far as how you time the length of the investment?
Yes.
So, okay, good. Yes, Mr. Schulman?
On the health insurance, it's great that our numbers are right where we were hoping they would be. Concern I have is one I've always had is making sure that employees are also seeking health care appropriately and not deferring health care because of cost. Have we done, or is there an anticipation to do any sort of survey of employees about how they feel about or their habits around health care? Are they seeking, are they deferring? Anything like that to, because the problem with high deductible plans as people move into them is that over time, the costs then wind up going up because they defer more invasive and inappropriate care because of current cost, right? Like anybody who puts off something for tomorrow, it gets more expensive as you get down the line. So it looks good at the beginning and it looks worse at the end. I just want to make sure that the employees feel that they're fully engaged in their own health, and I don't know if an anonymous survey would work to make sure they're all.
Yeah, I know I went into the high deductible this year for the first time, and I've become much more conscious of going out and seeing his website and shopping what needs to be done, and making sure when I go into the doctor, it's like, this is free, this is an annual physical,
Well,
It's worked out really well.
Then the other question becomes with the high deductible is how many employees are participating with their own funds in the HSA and actually putting money aside for their future health care costs. Again, we want to keep employees happy and healthy, and the high deductible plan lowers that cost, but they then need to come up with that money on their own. So
over half the members in it now do contribute via paycheck deduction into their HSA account. Some actually have it so well timed they know how much they need at the end of the year. They put a lot in was actually surprised at the amount of people, but it's well over half, if not a little bit more. I don't have the exact percentage, but they are contributing. We,
Well,
like,
that's
more
actually, that's
than
good news. I mean, over half is more than I would have guessed. I would have said probably about a third.
Oh, yeah.
If I just had to pick a number. So, that's good. I just want to make sure that we're saving costs on the one side, but we need to make sure that employees are adequately preparing for their own needs on the other side as well. Okay, thank you.
Future topics? Is that all you have?
That's all we have on the-
That's all you have?
Or on the board.
Okay. Future topics, anything?
Covered everything?
No? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Your friends, right?
You looking?
Yes, I'm doing well. How about you?
Pardon me?
Telling her.
My assistant.
I'm moving, yeah.
Jennifer.
How's that happening, Fred?
I'm not gonna use.
She said it
my
wrong once,
reputation.
now it's-
They don't wanna do stuff right.
What happened to that?
Oh,